Long before satellites, drones, and stealth fighters dominated modern battlefields, there was a moment in history when the night sky itself became America's most terrifying weapon. Deep in the jungles of Southeast Asia during the brutal years of the Vietnam War, soldiers moving through the darkness believed the jungle was their greatest ally. The thick canopy, the winding dirt roads, and the endless black of night had protected supply convoys and hidden troop movements for years. But that confidence began to collapse the moment a new sound started echoing through the valleys. The distant, steady rumble of turboprop engines belonging to the legendary Lockheed AC-130. For American forces, that sound meant overwhelming power had arrived. It meant precision fire, protection from above, and a reminder that the United States could turn even the darkness into a battlefield advantage. But for the soldiers below, who were trying to move unseen through the jungle, it meant something far more frightening. It meant the sky had begun hunting them. When the AC-130 first arrived in Southeast Asia in 1967 under the Gunship 2 program, few could have predicted how dramatically it would change the nature of night warfare. At that time, one of the greatest challenges for American commanders was stopping the endless stream of supplies flowing into South Vietnam through the legendary Ho Chi Minh Trail. This massive network of jungle roads stretching across Laos and Cambodia had become the logistical backbone of North Vietnamese operations. Trucks loaded with ammunition, weapons, fuel, and soldiers moved constantly through the darkness, often with headlights off, hidden beneath thick jungle foliage. Traditional aircraft struggled to stop them. Bombers could attack during the day, but once night fell, the convoys simply resumed moving. It seemed like an impossible problem. That is, until the AC-130 arrived. Unlike any aircraft that had come before it, the AC-130 was designed not just to strike targets, but to hunt them. Built from the sturdy frame of the famous C-130 transport aircraft, the gunship carried an array of sensors and weapons that allowed it to dominate the battlefield after sunset. Infrared detectors, low-light television cameras, and radar systems gave the aircraft the ability to see through darkness and jungle cover in ways enemy forces never expected. Engines warming in the night, hidden vehicles creeping along dirt paths, even small groups of soldiers trying to move quietly through the forest could suddenly appear on the gunship's targeting systems. And once the aircraft's crew identified a target, the results were devastating. The AC-130 did not attack like a normal fighter jet. Instead of racing past its target in a single high-speed strike, the gunship moved slowly and deliberately, circling its prey in a precise maneuver known as a pylon turn. This orbit allowed the aircraft to keep its powerful side-mounted weapons constantly pointed at the same location on the ground. From thousands of feet above, the gunship transformed into a floating fortress of firepower. Streams of blazing tracer rounds from rapid-fire cannons would suddenly pour down from the darkness, followed by the thunderous impact of heavier weapons. Among them was the enormous 105mm cannon, essentially a flying artillery piece capable of destroying vehicles, bunkers, and fortified positions with terrifying precision. To American troops fighting on the ground, the sight of those spiraling tracer rounds streaking out of the sky became a symbol of relief and survival. But to the enemy forces below, it quickly became a symbol of terror. Night after night, the gunship stalked the supply routes of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Convoys that once moved confidently through the darkness suddenly found themselves exposed under the watchful gaze of airborne sensors. A single truck spotted by the gunship could trigger an attack that destroyed an entire convoy within minutes. Drivers would attempt desperate tactics to survive, shutting off engines, abandoning vehicles, or hiding under jungle cover. But the AC-130 crews were relentless. Guided by their sensors and sophisticated fire control systems, they could track targets even when they tried to disappear into the dense forest. Over time, the results were staggering. More than 10,000 enemy trucks were destroyed by AC-130 gunships during the war, crippling supply lines and forcing enemy forces to constantly change their strategies just to survive the night. The psychological effect of the aircraft soon became just as powerful as its physical destruction. Soldiers moving along jungle roads began to recognize the sound of the gunship long before they could see it. The deep drone of its engines echoing through the hills often triggered panic among troops who knew what might come next. Survivors of these attacks would later describe how the sky would suddenly erupt in spirals of glowing tracer fire, arcing downward in perfect circles as the aircraft orbited silently above. In those moments, the battlefield felt completely one-sided. The attackers could see everything below, while those on the ground could barely see the aircraft that was destroying them. American ground commanders quickly learned how valuable this new weapon was. During several intense engagements across South Vietnam, the AC-130 was called in to support units that were close to being overrun. In one remarkable battle, Special Forces defenders at a remote outpost faced a determined attack by Viet Cong fighters attempting to breach the perimeter. With the situation becoming desperate, the commander on the ground requested something that seemed almost impossible. He asked the gunship to fire directly along his own defensive line, where enemy troops were advancing. Trusting the aircraft's incredible precision, the crew opened fire, unleashing devastating cannon bursts that tore through the attacking force only meters away from friendly positions. The attackers were stopped, the base was saved, and the legend of the gunship grew even stronger among the troops who witnessed its power. But flying such a powerful aircraft in hostile skies was never without danger. As the war continued, North Vietnamese forces began deploying heavier anti-aircraft artillery and surface-to-air missiles along key routes. These weapons transformed parts of the jungle into deadly traps for low-flying aircraft. Several AC-130 gunships were eventually shot down during the conflict, and dozens of American airmen lost their lives while carrying out these dangerous missions. Yet, despite the growing threats, the crews continued to fly night after night, determined to keep pressure on the enemy supply network that sustained the war effort. Even after the fighting in Vietnam finally came to an end, the story of the AC-130 was far from over. Instead of fading into history, the aircraft continued to evolve and serve in conflict after conflict around the world. It appeared again during the Gulf War, where its powerful cannons helped stop advancing armored columns threatening coalition forces. In the mountains of Afghanistan, during the war in Afghanistan, the gunship once again proved invaluable, providing devastating close air support to special operations teams fighting Taliban and al-Qaeda forces. Later, during the Iraq War, the aircraft spent countless nights circling above cities and battlefields, responding to urgent calls for support from troops on the ground. Today, modern versions of the aircraft, such as the advanced AC-130J Ghost Rider, continue to serve with even more powerful technology, precision-guided weapons, and cutting-edge sensors. Yet, despite decades of upgrades and modernization, the core concept remains exactly the same as it was when the first gunships flew over the jungles of Vietnam. An aircraft circling in the darkness, sensors scanning the ground below, and when the moment comes, a devastating storm of fire descending from the sky. More than half a century after its first combat missions, the AC-130 remains one of the most feared and respected aircraft ever created. To American troops who have depended on its support in desperate moments, it represents protection, precision, and the unmatched reach of American air power. But to those who once tried to move unseen through the jungles of Southeast Asia, the memory is very different. For them, the sound of that distant engine in the night meant something unforgettable, the moment they realized that even the darkness no longer belonged to them.